All right, today we're going to put on our detective hats. We're diving into a family's history, but our only clues are the paper trails they left behind. Things like baptismal records, old newspaper clippings, and official registrations. It's a real-life puzzle, so let's get started. So, our entire investigation kicks off with this really fascinating mystery. We've got this family patriarch, a man named Bernabe Hungría. He was so important, so respected in his community, that they actually named a street after him. But here's the catch. When you try to find out where he came from, nothing. His origins are a total blank.
And look, this isn't just some small missing piece of information. The source material calls it the family's main brick wall. It's like he just appeared out of thin air, and yet he became this foundational figure. So how on earth do you solve a mystery like Bernabe?
Okay, so let's start by building a profile of our man Bernabe Hungría. Even with his mysterious origins, the life he built is incredibly well documented, and it shows just how important he was to his community.
The very first thing we can do is trace his footsteps. By following the records of his children's baptisms, we can actually map out his family's journey across the Dominican Republic. They start out in the capital, Santo Domingo, back in the 1870s, then they head east to an agricultural town, and finally they settle on the coast in a place called Boca Chica, the very town he would help build from the ground up.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, because this chart tracks his incredible journey up the social ladder. In 1882, a record just lists him as a labrador, basically a laborer or a farmer. But jump forward to 1905, and now he's signing documents as a proprietario, a property owner. And by the time he's in Boca Chica, local history remembers him as a marine y posador de barcos, a mariner and a boat owner. We're not just talking about a career change, we're witnessing his rise in the world.
And this slide right here, this tells you exactly why everyone respected him so much. He wasn't just a guy with some boats. He was the main driving force, the principal propulsor, behind the town's very first chapel. He taught religion classes himself, used his own money to start schools for the local kids, and because he could read and write, a big deal back then, his signature as a witness was a huge mark of trust. Bottom line, he absolutely earned that street name. You know, solving these family mysteries isn't always about the grand, sweeping story. Sometimes, an entire chapter of a family's life can be unlocked by one tiny detail. Let's see how a single clue can just blow a case wide open.
So this story is about Bernabe's granddaughter, Ángela Hungría. We stumbled upon this tiny newspaper clipping from 1929. It just says she was treated for a leg injury. Seems totally ordinary, right? But buried in that little notice was a clue that unraveled a really moving family secret.
And boom, there it is, the key piece of evidence. Not just a street, but a very specific address, Plaza San Antone, number 58. For any detective, a specific address isn't just a place, it's a lead you have to follow.
So this brings us to a really cool concept in genealogical research they call institutional inertia. It's basically the idea that buildings with a specific public purpose, like a school, a church, a hospital, they tend to keep that same function for a very, very long time.
And here is the big breakthrough. We did a quick check, and what's at Plaza San Antone number 58 today? A child care center. That's our smoking gun. It's almost certain that back in 1929, it was also an institution for kids, maybe a convent, an orphanage, or a boarding school. Suddenly, the story becomes clear. After their mother passed away, Ángela and her sisters were likely raised in this institution. A single address in a newspaper told us the heartbreaking story of these orphan sisters.
And you know what's cool? This idea of using documents to solve puzzles, it just keeps popping up all over the family tree. What looks like a mistake or a contradiction in the paper trail, well, that's often the exact clue you've been looking for.
Okay, for example, let's take the case of Ana Josefa Narvaez. The family had two different birth certificates for her, filed years apart, and they totally contradicted each other. Now, usually, this would be a genealogist's worst nightmare, but in this case, it was actually a gift.
Let's look at the evidence side by side. The first record from 1931 was declared by her father. He's listed as living. The second record from 1934 was declared by her mother. But now, she's listed as a widow. See it yet? The real clue isn't the conflicting birth years, it's her mom's marital status.
So here's the takeaway. We took this contradiction, and it ended up solving a totally different mystery. Her father, Jose Narvaez, was alive in October 1931. By October 1934, he had passed away. These two wrong documents didn't confuse the timeline, they actually created one, letting us pinpoint his death to a precise 3-year window.
Amazing.
And this same idea, finding stories hidden in the details, it works for tracking a family's movements too. Let's look at Antonio da Silva Carijola Sr. from Portugal. We can map his entire working life just by following where his kids were baptized.
Just look at this. In 1873, he's a farmer in one parish. 3 years later, he's in the same place but has a totally different job. He's a silk maker. Then, by 1883, the family has moved to another parish, and he's back to being a farm laborer. Every single one of these baptism records is like a pin on a map, telling the story of a working-class dad moving his family all around the city of Porto to find work and provide for them.
So what happens when you piece all of these different clues together? Well, you don't just end up with a dusty old collection of stories. You get a living, breathing legacy that stretches all across the globe.
Yeah, the descendants of these folks, they didn't just stay in one place. From their roots in the Dominican Republic and Portugal, the family branches spread out everywhere. We find them moving to Venezuela, to France, over to the United States, and even starting new family lines with partners from as far away as Peru. The paper trail leads us straight to a modern international family.
So let's just quickly recap what we've managed to uncover. We started with a patriarch who had no known past, but who built an entire town. We found the heartbreaking story of young sisters hidden in a simple street address. We used what looked like a mistake to solve the mystery of a man's death, and we mapped a family's journey by following their father's jobs. Each clue, each document, adds another thread to this rich, sprawling family story.
And really, that brings us to the final thought. These aren't just names and dates on a piece of paper. They're stories of struggle and ambition, of loss and resilience. They're a reminder that every family has its own mysteries, its own brick walls, and its own quiet heroes. Which really only leaves one question. What secrets are hiding in your paper trail?